In this episode today, I get to speak with Professor Behlul Ozkon, based in Istanbul, Turkey. Professor Behlul is a renowned expert in the geopolitics of the Middle East. It was a timely interview because there's a lot going on in the region as we speak. Syrian armed opposition forces are taking over major cities in quick succession. How things pan out is anyone's guess right now, but I think there's lots of trouble ahead for the region as a whole. It's very, very unfortunate. We're going to hope for the best and we're going to try and keep you posted with the events as they unfold. So do subscribe if you haven't done so already. And now let's get started. Bello, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
Excellent. Bello, I was looking forward to speaking with you on geopolitics, but as it happens, I think the timing couldn't be better because you're just the person who can explain some of these things to me. As you know, there's a lot going on in Syria, in your neighborhood. It would be good to kind of unpack that a little bit. But before we get to that, maybe I would actually like to start from your Turkey's internal politics, because there's often quite a lot of, from at least from where I am in the UK, we hear a lot about there's a big split between Islamists and seculars, and so what is the dynamics of the politics within Turkey, and what's the big debates in terms of geopolitics?
Well, as you might know, Turkey is under President Erdogan's rule since 2002. And however, President Erdogan has a coalition with a nationalist party, and there are other small parties. And it's a right-wing coalition, and some of the members of that coalition are far-right parties. And in the opposition, we have a diverse type of parties from left and right political spectrum. There are Islamist parties who are opposing Erdogan's rule. And
Sorry to interrupt you. You know, when you say the coalition, the governing coalition is from the right and maybe some far right, is that like the religious right, or is it like, how do you define the right?
Both nationalist right and religious right, and
Okay.
there is also, for example, a Kurdish right-wing party, Kurdish Islamist party,
Sure.
uh, which is quite a far-right party, which doesn't recognize secularism as a legitimate rule. And there are also far-right nationalist parties in the coalition, and therefore it is not very easy to for President in the opposition. For if you look at the opposition, it is very not easy and simple to explain Turkish politics, seculars versus Islamists, because there are a couple of Islamist parties. I mean, this is really about authoritarianism and democracy. And luckily, we have Islamist parties and nationalist parties in the
Yeah.
opposition bloc who do not approve Erdogan's authoritarian way of ruling Turkey. It is not full authoritarianism or autocracy. We call it as a very popular concept in political science, hybrid authoritarianism or competitive authoritarianism. Turkey is on that track, like Hungary, Poland, and other countries. Therefore, it is not like a Russian type of authoritarianism. There are elections, they are free but not fair. Uh, and the opposition lost the election in 2023, 52
Yes.
to 48. And therefore, I mean, it was very close election. And then there was a local election and in 2024, and the opposition party were number one, 5 points ahead of Erdogan's party. For the first time in the last 22 years, Erdogan, for the first time, is in the second rank in elections. That was a big surprise. And all the and things are not very easy for Erdogan. The economy is not doing great, and there are lots of foreign he has to deal. In addition to that, he has to uh, deal with this immigrant problem. And Turkey has one of the largest immigrant population from Iraq, Syria, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Africa. And it became in the last 10 years, unfortunately, the gatekeeper of these immigrants to Europe. And Erdogan had a deal with EU to keep these people within Turkey, and that creates a huge social and economic problems within Turkey. And imagine that a couple of million immigrants cause a huge problem in Europe. We don't know how many immigrants we have in Turkey. Some say 7, some say 10 million people.
Wow.
Yeah.
And are they spread out through the whole country, or are they in border areas, or where are they located?
Most of the immigrants who escaped the civil war in Syria, some of them are in the border areas. For example, there is a town called Kilis on the border with Syria. It has more than 50%. The 50% of the population, more than 50% population, is now Syrians in that city. But most of the immigrants live in big cities because they have to deal with the life. I mean, they have to earn money and maintain their life, and they can only find jobs in the big cities. And they are mainly concentrated, therefore, in Istanbul. But you can find them in all over the place, really. I mean, even in agriculture, you can find in immigrants in rural areas.
And so are you saying that, so in future, at some stage, if the government changes in Turkey, it's not necessarily going to go from being like a religious kind of a government to a secular, but it's going to be more maybe from an authoritarian to a more democratic system. Is that the kind of split?
Exactly. I mean, that is the exact split now in Turkey. I mean, we have a ruling bloc who claims that they are the native and only real representative of people. And the opposition, I mean, in the 2023 elections, the ruling bloc even claimed that the opposition are terrorists, supported by terrorists. There are some terrorist groups within the opposition. I mean, it was uh, somehow a nonsense claim, but it worked for some people because,
Yes.
as I told you, I mean, it is not a fair election. I mean, the ruling bloc controls the state TV, and it has enormous amount of financial resources, 10,000 trolls on social media, and the propaganda machine is very powerful in most of these type of regimes.
Well, that's interesting because this is what I've been seeing happening in so many countries around the world where the differences aren't just a difference of opinion or difference of policy, but the difference seems to be both sides. One side calls the other traitor, unpatriotic, um, aligned with the enemy. So it's kind of very kind of, if you look at like what's happening in America or Iran or Egypt or even in the UK, European countries, the splits are getting more and more radical. And I think maybe that's like a reflection of the global economic situation. If nothing else, I'm not entirely sure um, if there's a common thread between it all. But definitely, I can see that that is the situation in Turkey for a while as well.
I agree with you. I mean, Turkey is not exceptional in this situation and in these problems. And it's a global trend of right-wing populism is on the rise. I think the main reason for this problem is with the neoliberalism and with the collapse of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union, the left in the West and then in all over the world lost a kind of legitimacy and popular base, especially among the working class. I mean, the trade unions in all over the world are very weak now. We cannot compare them trade unions in 1970s and 80s. And the working class, since they don't have an organized power defending their interests, the working class are culturally shifting towards. I mean, these working class is culturally right wing. These are conservative people, but economically they are on the left, And the far right and right wing populists are literally hijacking their problems, the problems of the working class, and they are starting a cultural war in order to mobilize these people under the right wing parties. And left is basically losing a big social base in the societies. I think this is the main problem, and we can observe it in all over the world.
Yes, you're very right. What you're describing, it just seems so familiar to me here in the UK. Um, Also, Belal, when I think about Turkey, Turkey is an interesting country because on one hand, you have UK, European countries. I was born in the UK. I live in the UK. My family is from Pakistan. I have connections in Pakistan. Um, when I look at people, the way they think of Turkey in the Europe to how they think of Turkey in Asian countries, it's a big drastic change. So there might be suspicion for Turkey in Europe, but at least in Asia, in Pakistan, India, Azerbaijan, a lot of countries, they hold Turkey with a lot of high esteem, a lot of kind of reverence. So Turkey has a lot of soft power in a lot of places around the world. But at the same time, what's going on in geopolitics at the moment, I think people are looking at Turkey and kind of scratching their head thinking, what's going on? It's not making sense and it's kind of difficult to understand Turkey's position, and especially in terms of what's happening in Syria. Before we go into that, would you be able to tell us what the ground situation is in Syria right now?
Well, as our listeners might know, the civil war started in Syria in 2011, and Turkey is one of the main states which supported and armed the Syrian opposition in order to overthrow Assad's regime. And however, Turkey was not alone in that struggle. It was supported by United States, UK, France, to some Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. It was an alliance to get rid of
Yes.
Assad, and they thought it is going to take a couple of months. However, the calculated strategy collapsed because Assad was stronger than expected by these allies. The opposition was weaker, and the calculated strategy was Assad is his main power, 10% minority, which are Alawites in Syria. However, they underestimated his social base among the Christians and some Sunni Arabs. And this strategy didn't work, and the civil war continued. And unexpectedly, ISIS emerged uh, out of this power vacuum, because when the civil war started in the north of Syria, the Syrian army pulled its forces to the south in order to defend southern cities, Hama and Aleppo. And there was a power vacuum, and ISIS emerged in that power vacuum. And then there was this Kurdish militant force, PYD, which was a wing of PKK, which Turkey has been fighting since 1980s. And according to Turkey, United States, and most of the European countries, they define PKK as a terrorist organization. And PKK's wing also filled this power vacuum and controlled a huge chunk of territory in the northeast of Syria. Suddenly, I mean, the world was shocked because they expected that in a couple of months they are going to get rid of Assad, but in return, Assad was in power, and they had this ISIS, which created a huge problem. And they used, in order to defeat ISIS, Americans, PYD. This shocked Turkey because Turkey also calls PYD as terrorist organization, NATO member, uh, United NATO members of that organization. I mean, it created a huge problem within NATO also. And in 2016, for Turkey is most important problem other than Assad. And Turkey cut a deal with Russia and initiated a couple of military operations in the northern Syria and by PYD, and the opposition was retreated in a northwestern pocket of Idlib, and it was a kind of a balance in 2020, and for the last 4 years, nothing radical happened in that country. Everything started changing last week.
Yeah.
I think in a week, the Syrian army lost the second biggest city of Aleppo in a couple of days. 2 days ago, it lost Hama, the fourth largest city, and now it is retreating. I don't think it will defend it could defend the third largest city, Homs, and the only remaining is the capital of Syria, Damascus. Well, how could that happen in a week? That's the biggest question I have been dealing for the last 1 week, and I have an answer for that question. Well, it's a complicated answer, but I think I might try it. Last year, did this against Israel, and that changed the geopolitical balance of power in the Middle East. Israel started a military operation in Gaza, which killed thousands of civilians, which was a biggest human tragedy, one of the biggest in the region. Israel won that front as a result of turn out in Lebanon. There's Hezbollah, and it started a war with Hezbollah. But the problem was Hezbollah had lots of high-tech weapons from Iran, and that battle is causing big problem for Israel. Israel realized that it is not possible for it to win against Hezbollah as long as Hezbollah has the backing of Iran. And you might know that Israel was established in 1948. It only lost one time, and that was in Lebanon. And couple of months ago, Israel, I guess, realized that this is not a winnable war as long as it cannot cut the supply routes coming from Iran through Iraq, Syria, and to Lebanon. Well, the opposition, the Syrian opposition, which is HTS, this is a very radical group which has some links with it kept changing the name in order to get rid of this Al-Qaeda legacy. And this group, which has been in Idlib for the last couple of years and which was not active, we realized that in the last 1 week, they got high-tech weapons. And especially drones. And they started using it against the Syrian army. And they initiated a couple of explosions first in Aleppo. They killed a couple of Syrian army and Iranian commanders there, which created a confusion. And then they took Aleppo and then turned towards south. Well, obviously, this group, this HTS, has obtains supply routes and other things from Turkish border. But Turkey made a deal with Russia in after 2016, and this attack initiated by HTS is really destroying that deal. Therefore, Turkey as a mid-sized state, mid-sized power, cannot really confront Russia in Syria without obtaining the back of United States And in this case, I assume that Israel is really helping the Syrian opposition to obtain this territory all the way to Iraqi border so that they can cut the supply routes coming from Iran. You might ask the question, why is HTS interested in cutting the supply routes from Iran to Hezbollah? Because HTS is a radical Sunni group and they hate Iran and Hezbollah and other Shiite groups more than anyone else. And for them, I mean, for them, Iran is a more important enemy than Israel, really. And therefore, basically, Israel's strategy is supporting my enemy's enemy. In this case, Iran's enemy in Syria is HTS. Let's give them a green light so that they will cut the supply route, which is exactly happening now in Syria.
Very interesting. I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, because also these attacks happened on the same day when Israel had a ceasefire deal with Lebanon, and that couldn't have been a coincidence. So a lot of people were kind of thinking that Israel must be behind what's going on. And I think you make a lot of sense in that Israel has realized that they cannot defeat Lebanon until they close that supply line from Syria. However, at the same time, at the moment, no one's believing that this could have happened without Turkey's involvement. Do you see any signs of that? Because it's those groups that are kind of involved in this rampage at the moment are heavily backed by Turkey, and Turkey has a lot of influence over them. So what's the role of Turkey in this whole dynamic?
Well, I agree with you. I mean, definitely Turkey is backing this. The main supply route Turkey is controlling. And I mean, imagine that Syrian army, although it has been fighting in the last 13 years.
Yeah.
It is a very tired army, but we are talking about an army with tanks, fighter planes, and lots of equipment. Imagine that you are defeating an organized army and getting the second largest city and the third largest city, fourth largest city, and you have so many ammunition, you need so many supplies, and I mean, imagine that. You should have
Yes.
a very organized supply route, and definitely it's coming from Turkey. No wonder about that. And President Erdogan today officially backed this offensive. Until now, he was not publicly announcing Turkey's backing this offensive, but today he backed it because everyone knows that in a couple of soon, I mean, I don't want to give time, but soon this war will be in Damascus. The opposition is going to reach, HTS is going to reach Damascus, and no one knows what is going to happen there. Therefore, Turkey is backing this for sure. But my analysis is they alone cannot dare to start such an offensive against Iranian and Russian supported Syria because the opposition, the HTS, is not fighting Assad. They are fighting against Russia and Iran. And there will be repercussions of that for Turkey with Iran and Russia. But as long as the United States and Israel, because for Erdogan, this is also an emotional issue. I mean, he has been dealing with this Syrian crisis for the last 13 years, and for him, it's a personal issue. He wants to really get rid of Assad. This is going to be used by him in domestic politics also.
I think you're right. I also heard that so this whole operation was very coordinated, like you say, and apparently the funds were coming from Qatar, the supply line and the training and organization are coming from Turkey, and obviously the backing is coming from America and NATO, the rest of NATO. So it's a very organized. I just don't understand how Iran and Russia didn't see any of this coming. Um, and also when it started, I thought, okay, so they've taken Aleppo and maybe okay, they got lucky, and this will kind of get um, the government is going to get into action with Russian support, Iranian support, and this will get stopped here, and then things can reverse. But at the speed that they came, and now they've gone continue to Hama, like you said, and going to Homs. I think you're right. I think we might see the the rebel forces in Damascus within a few days. And what's going to happen after that, I have no idea, because for the past um, many years since this whole crisis has started, it's like a mini world war being played out, where almost all major powers in the region and in the world have been involved in some capacity or the other. And I don't know what do you think is going to happen, because Iran and Russia are not going to sit down and let all of this happen. So, what do you think is going to happen next?
Well, this whole operation aims taking back Iran out of Syria. I mean, uh, Israel wants it in order to cut the supply routes of Hezbollah and destroy Hezbollah forever. Turkey, because it Erdogan wants to have a regime in Syria ideologically close to Turkey, and ideology. I mean, not Turkey, but to his party, Islamic Party. As he wants to have a Sunni group ruling Syria rather than secular party. And then the question is, why now? Why so quick? Well,
Yes.
Syrian army has been fighting this war for the last 13 years. This army is tired, first of all. Second, Russia has been fighting a costly war in Ukraine. It has other priorities than Syria. And third, Iran has under economic sanctions, and they have been also dealing with Iraq, Yemen, Hezbollah, Hamas, and now Syria. I mean, really, these three and fourth, Hezbollah, the top leadership has been killed by Israel. Hezbollah fought with the Syrian regime in Syria against opposition. And therefore, this alliance of Russia, Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah is tired, and they are getting weaker. In addition to that, in the last couple of months, obviously HTS got high-tech weapons. I mean, I have been watching videos coming from Syria. Similar videos I've seen in the war between Azerbaijan and Armenia in Karabakh. I mean, that war, I mean, even Francis Fukuyama wrote that because since your program covers the geopolitics of the region, I would like to compare that conflict with and make analogies with Syria, because that war between Azerbaijan and Armenia, Armenian defense were so solid. However, they always expected an attack coming from the other side through the land, through the territory. However, drones used by Azerbaijan army destroyed Armenian defense in a couple of weeks, and they won the war. But I have seen tons of videos from that war. I mean, the soldiers waiting for the enemy, and then drone dropping bomb on the top of that. This
Wow.
drone war is psychologically destroying the army waiting on the field, because you don't know from which direction you are getting attacked. in the last 1 week, HTS is using the similar weapons, drones, against the Syrian army. And Syrian army, as far as I get from these videos, were totally hopeless. They really running away, because I mean there is no way for you to, you don't have weapons to fight against Russia. A couple of my friends asked this question. I mean, what's happening in Syria? I told them Syrian army is fighting with sword, and the other side has guns. It is like 16th century, really. I mean, if you have guns and the other side has sword, I mean, there is no hope for the enemy.
I think you're right, and drones have played such an important role so far in Russia and Ukraine war, but also were used from Lebanon and Iran against Israel. So I think things are changing in warfare very suddenly and very quickly. And I understand that Ukraine has actually been involved in providing training to the Syrian opposition. Have you heard about anything about that?
Yes, this is a very hot topic also, discussed by people interested in what's going on in Syria. But I believe Ukraine cannot be a deal breaker in this war. It doesn't have that capacity. And I think using Ukraine is used to divert the attention from Israel. Because, I mean, the obviously HTS cannot publicly announce that we are getting funded by Israel, supported by Israel. I mean, they are not going, I mean, in the Muslim world, you cannot fight against your enemy by saying that I'm supported by Israel. They have to divert this link with Israel. And Israel obviously cannot supply to HTS, which had links in the past with Israel's weapons to a group like HTS, radical Islamic group. And therefore, I mean, even by Ukrainians, or there are other third parties. But obviously, Israel is one of the has the most advanced country in this drone business.
Yeah.
And I don't think Ukraine, which cannot really challenge Russia enough, has the capacity to supply these weapons alone.
Actually, I hear that Turkey is one of the world leaders in drone technology, no?
That's true. Erdogan's son-in-law has a high-tech drone company called Bayraktar. And there are also other drone producers. And Turkey was the actually main supplier of which changed dramatically. Turkish drone. Why Turkey for years? This Iraqi-Turkish border, where PKK had been very strong in the past, north of Iraq. This is a very mountainous area. Mountains reaching 3,000, 4,000 mountains area. And standard army, you cannot really defeat the guerrilla. Turkey really had technology in the last 20 years. Actually, it bought rented drones first at the end of 1990s from Israel. They were used to call Herons. And then, however, Israel put some limits on these drones, and then Turkey to produce drones. And for the last 20 years, it has one of the best drone technology in the world, I guess.
Let me just take a moment's break to introduce our sponsors for today. This episode is proudly being sponsored by the Worldwide Listings Company Limited, or WLC for short. WLC is a e-commerce marketing agency specializing in making brands successful on Amazon. So if you are thinking of starting a new venture, or if you already have a brand and you want to take it to that next level, then get in touch and WLC will be able to help. For transparency purposes, let me also tell you that WLC is actually a company that I founded and am the director of. When you get in touch with WLC, you'll be getting in touch with me and my team, and we look forward to greeting you and seeing how we can help. Thank you, and now let's get back to the episode. I think this is why people are so baffled by what's happening, because on one hand, Erdogan's been talking very big for a long time, support in favor of Hamas in Palestine, saying that we will defend the Palestinians and we're going to send our armies. And a lot of people were like thinking, really hoping that Erdogan's going to do something. Other people are saying it's all talk. His talk is like bigger than his actions. But then when he actually does take an action, the action is to actually ultimately is going to kill off the resistance to Israel and is going to help Israel defeat Lebanon, Palestinians, Iran. So ultimately, is by doing all of this, Erdogan is directly supporting Israel.
Well, first of all, I should say that Palestinian people is suffering one of the biggest suppression in the 21st century. I mean, it's kind of an apartheid regime there.
Yeah.
And there is a big human tragedy, what's going on in Gaza and the West Bank and the settlers problem. And there are so many levels of this problem. I mean, we can talk about for days. However, the Palestinian people, I think, in the last 60, 70 years, they realized that almost all Middle Eastern leaders would use their problems in their domestic issues. They would do anything to Palestinians short of that.
Yeah.
And Nasser did the same. Assad, Hafez Assad was almost the same. And I was in Syria in 2001. Everywhere there were Palestinian flags, but not really. And when they help, they are doing it not for Palestinians, but for their own interests, using this Palestinian resistance for their own. It's not different than others. And in Erdogan's case, there is a Turkish journalist called Metin Cihan, who is based in Germany, and he has been publishing, based on the open sources, how Turkey continued its trade with Israel. When Erdogan was saying that Israel is the number one enemy and we are going to defeat it, we will do everything. On the one hand, he was saying that Israel is the number one enemy for the people in the Middle East. On the other hand, the trade was continuing and it was expanding. Okay, there was a huge domestic opposition against this hypocrisy of Turkish government, and then the pressure was so huge that Erdogan had to stop the trade with Israel. Guess what happened? They stopped the trade officially, but continued unofficially, implicitly.
Wow.
And therefore, I mean, this is hypocrisy that we are getting used in the Middle East, and Turkey is not different than other Middle Eastern countries, honestly.
Yeah, and so it's being noticed within Turkey that this is like a level of hypocrisy in the foreign policy of Erdogan.
Yes, I mean it was noticed, and there is an Islamist party who really used this hypocrisy in the local elections, and they got 5-6% of the votes, all from Erdogan's party. I mean, interestingly, really conservative people who are emotionally, by the way, in Turkey, left-wing people are also very attached to this Palestinian, like in all over the world. And also Islamist people, conservative people, real believers are also emotionally and politically very sensitive about this Palestinian cause. And the left has not been voting for Erdogan in the last 22 years, but there is not an party who is really increasing its votes, and their number one priority is the Palestinian. And this war or of again to create huge problem in the Turkish public opinion. On the one hand, some Islamists are proud that Assad is collapsing, but on the other hand, some are questioning that is this war in Syria aiming to weaken the distance against Israel? I mean, is this the real objective?
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm thinking, because I can't see. So if Syria is Bashar al-Assad's government is toppled, and HTS comes in, who are basically Al Qaeda with a different name, ultimately, how is that going to benefit Turkey to have these kind of people sitting in right next to Turkey, who at some stage are going to cause problems for Turkey themselves? No.
Believe me, I mean, it is all about economy. Okay, the Syrian cities are devastated by the civil war, and if there will be a new government, there will be lots of construction in these cities, and Erdogan's one of the priorities is to get this part of the cake.
Contract.
Yes, in Syrian economy. I mean, there will be lots of investments in Syria, return of some of the Syrian immigrants living in Turkey, and Turkish companies are going to play a huge role in the reconstruction of Syrian economy. That's more important than Palestinian cause or any other geopolitical problem. I mean, the profit is much important than any other issue.
I think you're right. I think ultimately governments make like moral arguments to justify their policies, but ultimately they're based on economy and personal and immediate interest. Similar to what's happening in Ukraine, basically, a lot of people are thinking, a lot of governments are thinking, what contracts can we get out of all of this when this ends? Also, I think you're right. If the government, if the opposition in Syria, they have taken Hama, if they take Homs, I don't think it's going to be long before they take Damascus. If that happens, what do you think is going to? So, if at that stage, do you think the whole country is going to fall to the opposition, or is the Syrian government likely to have like a small pocket left somewhere?
Well, as you might know, when the Ottoman Empire collapsed at the end of the World War I, Syria became a French mandate. And the French colonialism divided Syria into a couple of parts. They separated Lebanon, which historically had been part of Sham. And they separated also a small Druze state in the south, and there was Aleppo, Damascus, and Alawite state on the coast, Latakia. Similar part of Bengal. The opposition, first of all, not like the whole country. There will be a huge chunk of territory ruled by Kurds in the northeast. You remember that Iraq was invaded by United States, and it took 10 years, and then there was second invasion. And during that time, the Kurds get de facto independence in the north. They are, on the paper, it's part of Iraq, but it's a de facto independent state. Similar thing is going to happen in Syria. In the northeast of the country will be ruled by PYD, which is the link of PKK. Second, well, what is going to happen in Damascus and in the coast of Syria, Latakia? But Damascus and the coast, especially the coast, is populated. There are lots of Alawite minority, and the population of Damascus, since it's the capital city, part of that population is loyal to the regime, and there are also lots of Christians and who are not very happy to be ruled by a radical Islamic group, which had links in the obviously. And there are Armenians, Orthodox Arabs, and other small minorities. Well, and what is going to happen? Russian military bases on the coast. First, it will be ruled by Kurds, and there might be a small coastal state, and maybe Damascus. I'm not sure, but this would be kind of a Russian protectorate, and in the middle there will be a Sunni state ruled by different opposition groups. But again, I mean, when we talk about Syrian opposition now under the leadership of HTS, I mean, I don't know the exact number of groups. I mean, there are so many of them.
Yes.
And they increase and increase year by year. I mean, as someone who has roots with Pakistan, you know what's happened in Afghanistan. And the Mujahideen, yes, they defeated the Soviets in Afghanistan, and they immediately started fighting against each other.
Yes.
There might be a similar civil war within the opposition, Syrian opposition.
I think you're right.
Therefore, I don't think there will be stability. There will be definitely a de facto partition of the country. This is exactly what Israel is looking for. And this war, the recent war, is going to reach to that stage. However, it's not going to provide to Syrian people, unfortunately.
You're right. I think we've got a lot of trouble coming ahead. How do you see Iran and Russia's response? Do you think, because everything's moving so fast, do you think they will be able to, in a very short amount of time, make any difference on the ground?
I don't think so. Neither Russia nor Iran has the capability to stop the war and save Assad's regime from collapse. Russia might get a deal with Turkey and with the US to save its military bases on the coast and maybe Damascus, but I highly doubt it about Damascus. That might also fall. And Assad is pulling all of its forces to the capital. I don't think there will be a long war in Homs. That I don't see there will be a big resistance in Homs, but definitely he's pulling all of his sources into the capital city. He might use that resistance as a bargaining power with the opposition to have an exit from the Syria. He might leave Syria and go to Russia or Iran. I don't know. But the ruling elite of Baath might use the resistance in Damascus because they are pulling all of their resources to Damascus. They pulled their army from Deir ez-Zor today, and they might use that resistance for negotiation. And they already know from the Afghan experience that they have to have some resistance in the capital. I mean, otherwise they have to find plane tickets to leave the country. And very difficult to find in that times of crisis.
Yes. I think you're right. Ultimately, I think um, two things may happen. Firstly, Russia might even lose their bases in Latakia, um, at which point they're going to have to find some alternative um, arrangement for their presence um, in that part of the world. Secondly, I think America is going to have a major chip if Russia now has to negotiate with the USA to safeguard its um, kind of base within Syria. That's going to give the USA a major bargaining chip in Ukraine against Russia.
Uh, Let me use this opportunity to emphasize one important dynamic that we haven't talked about. We always talk about Israel and Iran, this problem between these two countries and kind of a regional war going on. However, the relations between Israel and Russia is uh, very good. Okay, these two countries are close to each other, and if there would be a deal about Russian bases, it would be between Israel and Russia. Uh,
Wow.
and Russia needs that basis because of the war in Ukraine. The Russian warplanes cannot use the Turkish Straits. Turkish Straits are close to Russian and Ukrainian warships, and because of the Montreal Convention signed in 1936. And therefore Russian warships cannot pass through from Black Sea to Mediterranean. Therefore, they cannot also send warships from Baltic to Black Sea and vice versa. Therefore, they need a base in Mediterranean, and that's the only place. Latakia and the Syrian coast is the only place. And I don't think Russians are would leave their bases, which is strategically very important for them.
Yes.
But definitely, that was a very important point that you raised. Uh, uh, for Russians, Syria is an instrument for their global interests, and they are going to use Syria in their bargain with the new Trump administration and with Israel, and they are going to make a deal including Ukraine, Georgia, Syria, and they want to solve these problems in a big bargain, in a big box of bargaining, I would say.
And what do you think is because if Iran loses that link that it has in Syria, is hugely going to impact the strength of Hezbollah in Lebanon, which in turn is going to impact Iran and its influence in the area. So, how do you see that kind of changing in coming days?
But Iran is the biggest loser in the last 1 week, definitely. And the Hamas attack in 2023, I don't know yet. Uh, uh, that attack was organized by Iran, planned by Iran, or it was attack planned and organized by Hamas, only Hamas itself. I don't know that. But that attack really changed everything uh, and for Iran and in a negative way. It is the biggest loser in the region, and I don't see uh, any way for them, for Tehran, to really gain some ground in Syria, and and honestly, I mean, uh, there is also some negative feeling among the people of Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. I mean, uh, at, in the end, these people are Arabs, and national identity is still very important for them, and they there is a negative feeling for of Iran, and there is some resistance coming, and there is all the ruling elite party, some of them at least, were not very happy with Iranian foreign policy because, I mean, in the end, really the Hamas attack against Israel is the ruling party. And therefore, there is this increasing among our Arab people, especially in Lebanon and Iraq. And therefore, very interestingly, Baghdad, which is mainly Shia ruling elite, they were not all defending as was. I mean, because they don't want to be used instrumental. They have other relations with Western countries, and become a puppet of Iran or instrument of Iran within their own country.
Am I right? So is your opinion that the attack by Hamas on Israel weakened Iran? I was of the opinion that it's actually strengthened Iran because Iran was able to demonstrate that Israel was not able to defeat Hamas, not even make a dent on Lebanon. Yes, they killed the top leadership by kind of what some might call like terrorist attacks on the top leadership. But on the actual battlefield, they weren't able to take even a single village. And then for the first time ever, they ended up receiving attacks from Iran directly into Israel, and Iran was able to show their strength in the whole region. So I think up until now, Iran was in a very good position, but now this has happened in Syria is definitely going to weaken Iran, and which is why I'm surprised that Iran and Russia both, their intelligence didn't see this coming. From that point of view, I think this is like a masterstroke from the powers that were supporting the opposition in Syria.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. This is a master stroke, and I think there might be a deal with Russia. I
Yeah,
mean, because I mean, Russian-Iranian relations are not perfect. They have their own problems, and especially in Syria, uh, they are not always working in alliance. Uh, However, I agree with you. Although Israel killed the all top leadership of Hezbollah and the resistance is still strong, but I mean, if you calculate that this will be a long war, uh, you might win a couple of fronts, but in the end, you are losing your most important ally in the region, Syria, which is Syria. I mean, Syria has been the biggest and maybe the only supporter of Iran during Iran-Iraq war, and Iran was the main supporter of Syria in the civil war. However, I mean, Iran is under economic sanctions and embargo, and they are facing huge problems also in this war against Israel. I mean, one of the top leaders of Hamas was killed in Tehran. Qasem Soleimani was killed in Iraq. I mean, in this technological war, they got the hits
yes.
from the other side.
Also, I'm still a little bit surprised that Turkey went along with this because, yes, it's given them short-term advantages, but on the other hand, I think Turkey's relationship with Russia and China and the BRICS was very, very important. Um, by doing this, have they decided they're now turning their backs to the BRICS?
Uh, but Turkey is has a very complicated relationship with Russia.
Yes.
We are dependent on Russia in terms of natural gas, and the in Turkey, and Russia is going to operate that power plant. That is going to make Turkey more dependent on Russia, and therefore we are paying billions of dollars to Russia yearly for natural gas and also nuclear power plant. And therefore, each year, Russia, Mr. Putin is getting big check from Turkey for natural gas and nuclear power plant. For the, I mean, there is a, there is a very big economic and trade relations between these two countries, and on the other hand, they are opposing against each other in Ukraine and in Syria. But in Ukraine again, there is a Western embargo against Russia, but Turkish Airlines is flying probably 20 flights per day to Russian cities, and Russia is connected to the world with Turkish Airlines. There are lots of Russian tourists. They can easily travel to Turkey, and therefore this is a very complicated relationship. Cannot tomorrow can wake up and say, okay, I cut all the diplomatic and trade relations with Turkey, because it is going to be also very negatively impacting Russian. Therefore, this is a very complicated and interesting relationship between these two countries.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, I should say, we are the only NATO country who bought S-400 missiles from Russia, and which we keep in the depot that we have not been using it. We paid millions or billions of dollars, and they are still not operational.
And Turkey got a lot of stick from NATO because for doing that. So also, isn't it the case that Erdogan's government was being toppled from within in a coup that Turkey was convinced is being backed by US, and Russia was the one that came and saved Erdogan then, no?
It is not as straightforward as
or
this.
At least supported Erdogan in it.
There are some factions probably within the US which knew that coup and didn't stop it. But I don't think the American government was backing that military coup. I don't think so.
Interesting. Behlul, I'm really appreciative of your time. I know you came from a TV studio broadcast, and I really appreciate that you gave us this time, because I can see you're going to be very busy for the next few weeks. Let's end this for now, but if possible, let's try and get together again in January to see where things are heading at that stage.
Sure, Tafin.
Thank you so much, Behlul, for your time.
Thank you for the invitation.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.